top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, this past weekend on Friday, the Mundo Boxing Gym held a Mundo Boxing promotion featuring two of their unbeaten upcoming bantamweight prospects. Russia's own Fatima Dudieva, a fighter we've talked about here on the channel, previous videos. She squared off against journeywoman India Smith. And while Fatima started off all right, she kind of faded down the stretch.
This was on Fight TV.
It was a very messy fight, a very messy affair between Fatima Dudieva and India Smith. India Smith, being the shorter fighter, lower center of gravity, looked to have had the faster hands of the two. She effectively flustered Fatima Dudieva, though her work wasn't tidy. Her work wasn't very clean, thus it wasn't very effective. At minimum, what you can say is that she made Fatima Dudieva look a lot more uncomfortable in there.
Fatima looked more uncomfortable than I've ever seen her.
I believe this was Fatima Dudieva's U.S. debut. She's only ever boxed outside of her native Russia once, I believe, in Germany. This was her first time fighting in the United States, and perhaps nerves.
Yeah, maybe that had something to do with it.
She's looked better, and that's the bottom line. And campaigning at the weight that she is campaigning, she needs to be better, because India Smith is a journeywoman, to say the least. Any fighter with a record like that.
Bring-along fight is what that was.
That's what the fuck it was. Night of the fight, it just so happens to have been Fatima Dudieva's birthday. That's right.
Happy birthday to you.
I want to argue that Fatima was given a gift in this fight. I'll just say that she needs to be better, because there are a lot of talented fighters at or around 118 pounds, 122 pounds. These are divisions that are fast filling up with sharks. Sharks!
Talented fighters.
Challengers, champions, Fatima Dudieva among them. And if she aspires to become a champion herself, she needs to be better, because India Smith is the kind of fighter you're supposed to be able to handle easy, and that's not the way that fight looked.
You better get it together, sweetheart.
That being said, Fatima Dudieva advances to a professional record of 12-0. On that same card, unbeaten powerlifter turned pugilist Steffi Cohen, who also campaigns in the bantamweight division. She took on
sensational, by the way.
She took on veteran fighter, journeywoman Garcia, who has something like, 32 professional contests, 32 professional bouts, to it was Steffi Cohen's two pro bouts, 2 pro fights. Steffi Cohen strikes me as a winner, a go-getter.
Ambitious.
Motivated, and she looked the part. I very much liked the double jab from Steffi Cohen, whilst closing the gap on an opponent that had a bit of a height advantage, a bit of a reach advantage, certainly more experienced than Steffi Cohen. I like the double jab and the snap on it, like the speed.
She tried for the right hand a few times.
Sometimes it landed, and sometimes it didn't. I would have liked to have seen more body work from Steffi Cohen, though it's not the kind of performance you can nitpick, because this was only Steffi's third pro fight, her third professional bout, and she really left an impression. She really looked the part out there.
She was fast.
Nimble, light on her feet, able to catch up to and stay with her quarry, her opponent. We saw some offensive highlights, the double jab, sometimes connecting with the right hand. We saw some defensive highlights as well, angling off, slipping and sliding around shots, around punches with upper body movement. Steffi Cohen is exhibiting a lot of promise.
Because she's a shorter, stumpier bantamweight, I'd like to see her go to the body more.
Shorter fighter with a lower center of gravity might find it easier to slip around the straight punches of a taller fighter and target their midsection. I think Steffi could stand to benefit from evolving into more of a body puncher.
Friday night's fight was billed as a bantamweight contest.
But in her previous 2 pro fights, those were fights that were fought above the bantamweight limit of 118 pounds. Steffi herself is registered as a super bantamweight. That's 122 pounds. A division that is fast heating up the same way the bantamweight division is heating up. And there's no shortage of talented fighters, challengers, champions, you name it. Steffi Cohen among them. And she's looking good. She's coming together. A very intriguing fighter, very intriguing up-and-comer, because she's a power lifter that's transitioning into pugilism. And there are hindrances based on the differences between the two disciplines, the two very different sports. I wondered, how will Steffi Cohen get along as the competition becomes stiffer? But she's looking the part. She's looking great.
I'm looking forward to her next fight.
This is where Mayerling Rivas holds the WBA title. Mexico's own Jamie Mercado, she holds the WBC title. Very soon, Shernika Johnson and Mexico's own Melissa Esquivel, they're going to be boxing for what is the vacant blue belt, the vacant IBF title. And France's own Sigeling Lefauve, she holds the WBO title. This is where Jackie Nava, Bobby Juarez, they campaign here. Mary Romero, who gave Amy Timlin her first professional loss. This is a division with no shortage of talent.
Catford's own Ellie Scottney.
That's right, who was also in action this past weekend, Saturday. part of a Matchroom show, Jacobs versus Ryder. She campaigns at super bantamweight as well, and it's what I always told you. 122 pounds is about to heat up in all the ways that 118 pounds is heating up, and Steffi Cohen is a part of that picture.
This weekend, she advanced to a professional record of 3-0
And looked good doing it. In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Deontay Wilder has revealed that he is considering doing ayahuasca,
What?
a South American psychedelic brew, to go on a quote-unquote spiritual journey and help him make his decision about whether or not to retire from boxing or return to the ring and continue fighting. Not encouraging for what remains of Deontay Wilder's fan base. Not encouraging at all, because if he must
Get high.
ingest psychotropic drugs to help him make a decision.
So this means they ain't got nothing on the schedule for this guy right now, do they?
He was quoted as saying, "I'm thinking about doing ayahuasca. That's going to be my decision-making process. Boxing's put a bad taste in my mouth because of what it's done to me. It's dangerous, politics, cheating. I still have love for the sport, though, and this was part of the Byron Scott podcast. He was alongside his wife,
Kelly Swift.
He mentions danger, politics, cheating. Cheating, that caught my attention because Deontay Wilder, is the architect, the engineer of his own undoing. It was he and his team that chose to fight Tyson Fury as opposed to Anthony Joshua at a time when Wilder versus Joshua was the hot topic. Wilder versus Joshua was the fight, not Tyson Fury versus Wilder. That was an alternative, a substitute. But it was Deontay Wilder and his team from the very beginning that placed more emphasis and more priority on fighting Fury than fighting Anthony Joshua.
What remains of Wilder's fan base, they won't tell you that.
That's not the account of events that Wilder's fans are going to tell you, but that's what happened. Need I remind you that from the very beginning, Tyson Fury wasn't the mandatory challenger to Wilder's green belt. Thus, if Tyson Fury got a shot at that belt in the first place, it's because Wilder gave him one, and he gave him one voluntarily, as a voluntary title defense, not a mandated title defense. It wasn't mandatory. It wasn't compulsory. He chose to do that.
And that's what led him here.
Fury didn't earn a shot at the green belt by way of the WBC, by way of the World Boxing Council. He was out for something like 2.5 years. He comes back. He fights Sefer Seferi and Francesco Pianetta. None of those fights were WBC final eliminators. Tyson Fury himself was not the mandatory challenger to Deontay Wilder's title, but Wilder chose to fight him anyway. That was more important to him than giving the fans what they want, the undisputed heavyweight title fight. And that's what set him on this path, doing the dance with Devil, doing the dance with Tyson Fury. He claims that Tyson Fury cheated in the first fight and the second fight.
But after all this time, he has yet to substantiate any of those claims.
A lot of content creators here on YouTube have made a pretty penny talking up this theory, propagating it, this conspiracy theory that alleges that Tyson Fury had foreign objects hidden inside of his gloves, even though there are images and video of JD's overseeing Tyson Fury's hands being wrapped in the locker rooms. It's a conspiracy theory that has not yet been substantiated. It's very hard to reconcile.
I'm no Tyson Fury fan.
But based on this conspiracy theory, both the World Boxing Council, the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and JD's himself, who was present while Tyson Fury's hands were being wrapped, they would all have to be complicit with this conspiracy against Deontay Wilder. It's silly and it's childish, and what it really strikes me as is a guy who can't deal with the reality of his own decisions. Thus, he is turning to psychotropic drugs to help him.
It's a coping mechanism.
The assisted aid of psychotropic drugs or psychedelic teas or whatever the hell it is, if the assisted aid of these chemicals is required for Deontay Wilder to make his decision regarding the rest of his career, what's left of it, I think he's already made a decision. Because if he wanted to come back, he would be back, and we'd be hearing about a scheduled fight, not a psychedelic tea or a psychotropic drug.
What this means is he hasn't made his decision yet.
And if he hasn't made his decision yet, he has no fights scheduled at this time. Thus, Wilder versus Ruiz, that's in the air. Wilder versus Helenius, Wilder versus anybody. It's all in the air. And the takeaway from all of this is, after all this time,
That third fight with Tyson Fury was at the beginning of October last year.
so you've got all of October, November, December, and January. We're in the middle of February, and Deontay Wilder still hasn't made a decision whether or not he wants to move forward with his career, having suffered 2 back-to-back losses to the same guy. This highlights the mental fragility I've been talking to you guys about for 3 or 4 years. The day the bell tolls for Wilder, psychologically, he won't be able to handle it because punchers, they don't recover from losses the same way that cerebral fighters do. Cerebral fighters go back to the playbook, try new things and work on them, whereas punchers, they rely on their punch. And the day that their punch isn't enough to get the job done,
They're never the same after that.
it's not that there aren't other opportunities out there for Deontay Wilder. He could make a pretty penny boxing Andy Ruiz in a domestic United States pay-per-view here in America, though that fight won't have the same size, the same scale, pay scale, as the Tyson Fury fights did for Deontay Wilder. In the second fight, he made something like $30 million up front, $30 million guaranteed. I believe the payday was a little less for the third fight. I believe he made something like $20 million. Those $20 million paydays, they're not out there right now for Deontay Wilder. He must rebound first, though he could still make good money boxing Andy Ruiz.
I don't think he gets $30 million up front for that fight.
But I could see 10, maybe 15 million up front. The problem for Deontay Wilder, two, maybe three-pronged problem. He's already boxed for more money than he stands to make getting back out there right now. Fought for $30 million in the second fight, something like $20 million in the third fight with Tyson Fury. Whereas now, if he comes back, he stands to make less in a rebound fight. That doesn't help motivate him. Couple that with the two back-to-back beatings he suffered at the hands of Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder can tell people, whoever will listen, that Tyson Fury cheated. He still has yet to substantiate those claims, those accusations. I believe that those beatings left a splinter in Deontay Wilder's mind to where he won't throw that trademarked right hand of his with the same conviction that he used to before Tyson Fury beat him.
He left a piece of himself back there in those last two fights.
And at this time, for a guy who's made that much money, at this age, Deontay Wilder is well into his mid-30s. Perhaps what he left back there is more than he can aspire to get back at this time. I mean, if he wants to rebound off the loss, he can, though psychologically, he has to be in the right headspace to do it. Otherwise, it ain't gonna happen.
If you have to turn to a psychedelic tea to decide,
then you've already decided. Indecision can be interpreted as a form of decision. You don't really want to come back.
you're searching within yourself for reasons to even do so.
You say that Tyson Fury cheated in the first two fights, but well over a year later, you have yet to prove that. In the third fight, you guys took extra care, paid extra attention to the details, and the story was that Deontay Wilder and his team were happy with everything. I mean, it's very strange that you think that all this cheating was going on under the auspices of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, only for you to stage the third fight under those same auspices. That might sound familiar, but why would you return to the scene of the crime if you allege that there was a crime, that there was foul play?
Deontay Wilder still hasn't made peace with this.
In truth, I don't think he ever will. Perhaps in Deontay Wilder's own mind, he truly believes that Tyson Fury cheated. He just can't prove it. Though I'll go a step further. Let's say Deontay Wilder's right. Let's just entertain it for a second. Why not? Tyson Fury only got the opportunity to cheat because you gave it to him.
They offered you more money to fight Anthony Joshua, and you admitted that yourself.
I'm not going to argue with any emboldened fanboy of Deontay Wilder's over what he said over a public statement that he made, that he released via his own social media. There was more money on the table for him to box Anthony Joshua than there was for him to fight Tyson Fury. And he made that decision. There were no cheating allegations after the first fight. It was only after the second fight, when he lost, when he got knocked out, or I should say when his corner pulled him out. That's when all the cheating accusations started.
Truth is that Deontay Wilder was the architect of his own demise.
Even in his version of the story, none of that quote-unquote cheating takes place if you don't give that guy the opportunity. And guess what?
What?
You gave him that opportunity. More than once.
You did this to yourself.
Finally, just in keeping with the theme of heavyweight news per tweet from Michael Benson, Bob Arum on Dillian Whyte's public silence following the Tyson Fury fight purse bids.
He's saying, I want extra money to promote. Our position is, we're not going to give it to you. If he doesn't participate in the promotion, he's a damn fool.
The story is that Dillian Whyte has until the 19th of this month to sign the contract for the Tyson Fury fight, which basically means he hasn't signed it yet. At the same time, what these comments from Bob Arum mean is that there is dialogue between them. There might be silence in the public eye, in front of the prying eyes of the boxing community, the boxing public, but behind the scenes, there has been dialogue, the silence has been addressed, and what Top Rank and Queensberry Promotions want is for Dillian Whyte to jump in and start selling this fight. Though I question...
What's in it for Dillian?
Tyson Fury's getting a lion's share of the pot. Ain't that the story? You have two separate promotional outfits, two transatlantic promotional outfits involved. Queensbury over there in the United Kingdom and Top Rank here in the United States to help sell this fight, to help promote it. So why are you asking Dillian to help you out?
What's in it for Dillian?
Does he even get a share of the pay-per-views upside, if there even is an upside? Because if he's not getting a share of that, then there actually is no reason for him to get involved.
If he's not getting a share of the pay-per-view upside, what difference does it make to him what the fight generates?
That has more to do with Frank Warren and Bob Arum, what the pay-per-view generates and whether or not it's a commercial success. If Dillian Whyte don't stand to make no extra money off of the pay-per-views upside, then why should he give a damn what it does, what it generates, and how many people buy it? There's no stake in it for him.
If you're willing to throw him something off the top, maybe you could work something out.
You've got Tyson Fury, the greatest showman on earth. I mean, every Tyson Fury fan you ask swears up and down on a stack of Bibles.
Well, he's the biggest name in heavyweight boxing.
He's a draw. He's a big marquee attraction over there in the United Kingdom, where he hasn't fought in over 3 years. I've been telling you the whole time, Dillian Whyte in the last 3 years has sold more pay-per-views and put more asses in more seats in the UK the last 3 years than Tyson Fury has.
And that's why they want him to help promote this fight.
Tyson Fury's fans have spent a lot of time diminishing Dillian Whyte's resume, his career accolades, and his marquee value over there in the United Kingdom, only for Frank and Bob to plead with this guy to start helping to sell this fight. Pretty please?
Please, help me.
And if he does, I think it will have added commercial value. If he does, if he decides to, based on the bad blood between these two boys. So if he
doesn't, and he remains silent, it's up to Frank and Bob to sell this thing.
them and Motormouth Fury, who's got no filter for his fucking nonsense. I reiterate, if there's no added benefit for Dillian, if his guarantee is all he stands to make, then there's no reason for him to get involved in the promotion.
No, not if all he's getting is his guarantee.